Let me tell you about the human who made 3 empires fall to their knees without firing a single shot. The bureaucrat who turned paperwork into a weapon of mass destruction. The man whose signature alone could make a Vorthak warlord wake up screaming in the middle of his sleep cycle. His name was Arthur Pennington. And yes, I know what you are thinking. Arthur Pennington sounds about as threatening as a bowl of warm soup. That was precisely the point. I should know. I was there. I'm Kelris Van, diplomatic attaché to the Galactic Concordance, and I watched this absolute madman of a human dismantle the entire political structure of the Outer Rim with nothing but a fountain pen and an unhealthy obsession with regulatory compliance. The first time I met Pennington, I thought someone was playing a joke on me. It was a Tuesday. I hate Tuesdays. Always have. My species doesn't even have a concept of weeks, but humans introduced us to the horror of Tuesdays. And now I can't escape them. The Concordance had just received an emergency transmission from the Drakorian hegemony. For context, the Drakorians don't do emergencies. These are beings who once watched their moon explode and filed a formal complaint about the debris interfering with their satellite networks before evacuating their cities. But this time, their ambassador was practically hyperventilating through his translator. "He's coming," the ambassador wheezed. "The human. The one with the forms." I had no idea what he was talking about. "Which human?" I asked, pulling up the diplomatic registry on my data tablet. "We have 17,000 registered human diplomats in the Concordance. You are going to have to be more specific." "Pennington," the ambassador whispered, and I swear his scales went 2 shades paler. "Arthur Pennington." I scrolled through the database, found the file, stared at it. Human, male, age 53 standard years, previous occupation tax auditor, current position special compliance officer for the Terran Diplomatic Corps, no military service, no combat training, no enhanced modifications. Hobbies included stamp collecting, competitive Sudoku, and breeding orchids. This was the being that had a Drakorian general trembling. "With all due respect, Ambassador," I said, trying very hard not to laugh, "your empire has 12,000 warships. You are worried about a middle-aged human who grows flowers." The ambassador's eyes went wide. "You don't understand. He doesn't need warships. He has something far worse." "What?" "Subclause 17 B. I blinked. "The trade regulation?" "The trade regulation," he confirmed, and then the transmission cut out. 2 hours later, Arthur Pennington walked into Concordance headquarters carrying a briefcase that probably cost less than my lunch and wearing a suit that looked like he'd purchased it during the previous geological era. He was completely, utterly, devastatingly average. Brown hair going gray at the temples. Glasses that he absolutely did not need because humans had perfected vision correction centuries ago. A slight paunch that suggested he enjoyed carbohydrates more than exercise. He even had a coffee stain on his tie. "Good morning," he said, extending a hand. "Arthur Pennington, Terran Diplomatic Corps. I believe we have a meeting scheduled." I shook his hand, confused. His grip was firm but unremarkable. His smile was pleasant but forgettable. Everything about him screamed mediocrity. This was the person who had terrified the Drakorians. "Mr. Pennington," I said, gesturing to a conference room. "I must admit, I'm not entirely sure why you are here. The Drakorian situation is, well, it's complicated, but I'm not sure what Earth's tax office has to do with interstellar politics." He smiled. Oh, that smile. I didn't know it yet, but that smile was the last thing 17 corrupt politicians would see before their careers evaporated. "Oh, I'm not with the tax office anymore," he said cheerfully, opening his briefcase. "I have been promoted. Now I handle compliance issues for the entire diplomatic corps." He pulled out a folder. It was thick. Very thick. The kind of thick that suggests someone has been doing a lot of reading and taking extensive notes. "I have been reviewing the trade agreements between Earth and the Drakorian hegemony." He continued, flipping through pages with the casual ease of someone discussing the weather. "Fascinating stuff, really. Did you know that according to Article 7, Section 3, Paragraph 12 of the Interstellar Commerce Compact, all signatory nations must maintain transparent shipping manifests for any cargo exceeding 10,000 metric tons?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, that's standard procedure." "Indeed it is," Pennington agreed, his eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. "Very standard, very clear, which makes it quite puzzling that the Drakorians have failed to file proper manifests for approximately Let me check my notes. 4,732 cargo shipments over the past 18 months. My stomach dropped. That's probably just an administrative oversight. I stammered. Oh, absolutely. Pennington said, nodding vigorously. I'm sure it's nothing. Just a little paperwork issue. However, according to Subclause 17 B, failure to maintain proper shipping documentation results in a penalty of 0.003% of the total cargo value per day until the violation is corrected. He pulled out a calculator, an actual physical calculator. The man could have used his neural implant or his data tablet or literally any piece of technology invented in the last 2 centuries, but no, he had a calculator that looked like it had survived a war. Now, let me see, he muttered, punching numbers. 4,732 shipments, average value approximately 6 million credits per shipment, 540 days of non-compliance. His finger hovered over the equals button. That comes to approximately 147 billion credits in accumulated fines. The room went very quiet. Plus interest, of course, Pennington added helpfully. Compounded daily. I couldn't breathe. 147 billion credits would bankrupt the Drakorian hegemony's entire merchant fleet. It would destabilize their economy. It might actually start a war. Mr. Pennington, I said carefully, surely we can find a way to resolve this that doesn't involve catastrophic economic sanctions. He looked at me with those mild, forgettable eyes and smiled. Of course we can. The Drakorian hegemony just needs to file the proper paperwork. I have taken the liberty of preparing the necessary forms. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents that must have been 3 feet high. Should take their administrative staff approximately 6 to 8 months to complete, assuming they work around the clock. 8 months? Oh, I'm sorry, is that too long? He looked genuinely concerned. I suppose they could hire additional staff to expedite the process. The forms are quite detailed, you see. We need serial numbers, origin points, destination coordinates, cargo classifications, crew manifests, fuel consumption reports, maintenance logs, and insurance verification for each shipment. It's all very standard, really. I was beginning to understand why the Drakorian ambassador had looked so terrified. Let me make a call, I said weakly. 3 hours later, the Drakorian High Council was on an emergency video conference with us. All 7 counselors looked like they hadn't slept in days. Their Supreme General, a scarred veteran named Krothos, who had personally led the siege of the Meridian Cluster, looked like he was about to cry. Mr. Pennington, General Krothos began, his voice shaking slightly. Perhaps we can discuss a compromise. A compromise? Pennington looked delighted. I love compromises. What did you have in mind? The trade dispute with the Terran colony on Epsilon 7, Krothos said quickly. The one regarding mining rights. If we were to reconsider our position. Oh, that old thing? Pennington waved a hand dismissively. No, General, that's a completely separate issue. This is about regulatory compliance. We can't just ignore violations because they are inconvenient. 200 billion credits, one of the counselors blurted out. We will pay 200 billion credits to settle this matter. Pennington blinked. I'm sorry, I don't think you understand. This isn't a negotiation. The fines are legally mandated under the Interstellar Commerce Compact, which your government signed in standard year 2047. You can't buy your way out of regulatory compliance. Then what do you want? Krothos demanded, slamming his fist on the table. Pennington adjusted his glasses. I want you to file the proper paperwork. That's all. I'm a very simple man with very simple needs. I need documentation. I need transparency. I need you to follow the rules that your government agreed to follow. This is blackmail. This is bureaucracy, Pennington corrected gently. I'm simply enforcing existing regulations. If you find the regulations burdensome, I'd be happy to direct you to the proper channels for requesting amendments to the Commerce Compact. There's a form for that too, of course. It's only about 200 pages. The counselors were whispering frantically among themselves. I could see the panic spreading across their faces like a contagion. We have rights. Another counselor protested weakly. We have sovereignty.
Absolutely you do.
Pennington agreed enthusiastically. You have every right to withdraw from the Interstellar Commerce Compact. Of course, that would mean revoking your trade access to all Concordance member nations, including Earth, the Vaxian Collective, the Thornmere Union, and approximately 73 other civilizations. I estimate that would reduce your GDP by approximately 68% within the first year. But yes, you absolutely have that right. He smiled that terrible, pleasant smile. Or you could just file the paperwork. General Krothos looked like he was having an aneurysm. His scales had gone from pale to nearly translucent. You are destroying us. Oh no, General, Pennington said, and for the first time I heard something cold in his voice, something that suggested the mediocre exterior was hiding something far more dangerous. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply pointing out that you have been cheating on your trade agreements for years, and now the bill has come due. You tried to hide illegal weapons shipments in unmarked cargo containers. You thought you could slip them past us because nobody actually reads the shipping manifests. But I do, General. I read every single one. The room fell silent. Those 4,732 shipments? Pennington continued, his voice still pleasant, but his eyes absolutely frozen. Every single one contained military hardware being funneled to separatist groups in the Outer Rim. Plasma rifles, fusion bombs, neural disruptors. You have been arming terrorists, General, and you have been using legitimate trade routes to do it. Krothos said nothing. The counselors said nothing. They had nothing to say. Now, Pennington said, pulling out another form, here's what's going to happen. You are going to file complete and accurate shipping manifests for every single one of those shipments. You are going to provide full documentation of the weapons you have been smuggling. You are going to cooperate completely with concordant security forces in tracking down and recovering those weapons, and you are going to implement new oversight protocols to ensure this never happens again. He slid the form across the conference table. It landed with a soft thump that sounded like thunder. Or, Krothos asked quietly, or I submit my report to the Concordance Council, the Commerce Commission, and the Interstellar Court of Justice. I outline every violation, every smuggled weapon, every dead civilian killed by the terrorists you have been arming. And then we see what the rest of the galaxy thinks about doing business with the Drakorian hegemony. Pennington stood up, closing his briefcase with a decisive click. You have 72 hours to begin filing the necessary documentation. I will be in my office if you need clarification on any of the forms. Have a pleasant day, gentlemen. He walked out of the conference room, leaving 7 of the most powerful beings in the Drakorian hegemony sitting in stunned silence. I followed him into the hallway. That was... I couldn't find the words. How did you know about the weapons? Oh, I didn't, Pennington admitted cheerfully. Not for certain. But when someone files false shipping manifest for thousands of shipments, there's usually a reason. I took a calculated risk. Besides, their reaction told me everything I needed to know. You bluffed? I investigated, he corrected. There's a difference. I spent 6 months cross-referencing shipping routes with reports of terrorist activity in the Outer Rim. The patterns were quite clear once you knew what to look for. The Drakorians have been very naughty. He started walking toward the exit. I hurried to keep up. Mr. Pennington, do you have any idea what you have just done? The Drakorian hegemony could collapse. This could destabilize the entire sector. He stopped and turned to face me. For a moment that pleasant mask slipped, and I saw the steel underneath. Mr. Veron, those weapons killed 17,000 people last year. Men, women, children, entire colonies wiped out by terrorists armed with Drakorian plasma rifles. The hegemony was making a profit while innocent beings died. He adjusted his glasses. So yes, I know exactly what I have done. I have made them face consequences. And if that destabilizes them, then perhaps they deserve to be destabilized. The mask slipped back into place. The mild smile returned. Now, if you will excuse me, I have another meeting. The Vaxian Collective has been very creative with their tax declarations. Fascinating stuff. Really. Did you know they have been classifying military expenditures as educational funding? Very clever. Very illegal. Should be fun to sort out. He walked away, whistling something that might have been Mozart. I stood there in the hallway, realizing I had just witnessed something terrifying. Arthur Pennington wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. He didn't have weapons or armies or fleets. He had something far more dangerous. He had rules. He had regulations. He had a complete and absolute refusal to let anyone break them. And somehow, that made him the most dangerous human I had ever met. The next day, the Drakorian hegemony began filing the requested documentation. They also issued a formal apology to the concordants, pledged to cooperate with all security investigations, and implemented new oversight protocols for all military exports. Within a week, concordance forces had recovered 600,000 weapons from terrorist cells across the Outer Rim. The death toll from terrorist attacks dropped by 73% over the next month, and Arthur Pennington went back to his office, filed his reports in triplicate, and moved on to his next case. Word spread quickly through the concordance. The human with the briefcase. The man who could end your government with a memo. The bureaucrat who made generals weep. But Pennington didn't care about his reputation. He cared about the rules, and as I would learn over the coming months, that made him absolutely unstoppable. Because you can negotiate with warriors, you can bargain with politicians, you can intimidate diplomats, but you cannot reason with a bureaucrat who genuinely believes in the importance of properly filed paperwork. That's where real power lives. In the fine print, in the subclause, in the signature of a man who refuses to look the other way, and the galaxy would never be the same. So where were we? Oh right. Arthur Pennington had just made the Drakorian hegemony wet themselves over incomplete shipping manifests. Good times. You'd think that would be the end of it, wouldn't you? One bureaucrat, one spectacular takedown, everyone learns their lesson and goes home. That's how these stories usually work. But this isn't a usual story. This is about the time Arthur Pennington accidentally started a diplomatic revolution with nothing but a red pen and an encyclopedic knowledge of interstellar contract law. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. After the Drakorian incident, I thought I understood what Pennington was doing. He was a watchdog, a very meticulous, very annoying watchdog who made sure everyone followed the rules. Fine, every government needs those. What I didn't understand was that Pennington wasn't just enforcing rules. He was rewriting the entire power structure of the galaxy. And he was doing it completely on purpose. 3 weeks after the Drakorian mess got sorted, I found Pennington in the Concordance archives at 2 in the morning. The archives, for those unfamiliar, are 17 levels of climate-controlled storage containing every treaty, every agreement, every trade deal, and every diplomatic document signed in the last 400 years. Nobody goes there. Ever? The documents are all digitized, the physical copies are just backup. But there was Pennington, sitting at a table surrounded by paper documents that were older than some civilizations, wearing reading glasses and making notes in a leather-bound journal. "Mr. Pennington?" I called out. "It's 2 a.m. Don't you sleep?" He looked up, genuinely surprised to see me. "Oh, hello, Mr. Vaughn. I sleep plenty, thank you. 7 hours every night. Very important for cognitive function. I just had an idea this evening and needed to verify something." I walked closer. The documents spread across his table were extensive. Treaties from the founding of the Concordance. Trade agreements from the first contact era. Diplomatic protocols that hadn't been referenced in decades. "What are you researching?" I asked, morbidly curious. His eyes lit up. Actually lit up. Like someone had just asked him about his favorite hobby. "I'm tracking a pattern," he said excitedly. "Did you know that every major trade agreement signed in the last 200 years contains the exact same clause regarding dispute resolution? Article 9, Section 4. It states that any disagreement between signatory parties must be resolved through arbitration before the Concord's Commerce Commission." "Yes," I said slowly, "that's standard language. It prevents trade wars." "Exactly." He tapped the document enthusiastically. "It prevents trade wars by forcing arbitration. But here's the interesting part. Do you know who writes the rules for arbitration?" I didn't. I'd never thought about it. "The Commerce Commission," Pennington continued, "operates under a charter written in standard year 256. That charter was written by the founding members of the Concordance, which at the time consisted of Earth, the Vaxian Collective, the Thornmere Union, and the Kepalari Confederacy. Those 4 civilizations established the rules. Everyone else who joined later just accepted them. So those rules heavily favor the founding members. Not obviously, not in ways that would trigger immediate objections, but in small ways, procedural ways. The kind of ways that compound over decades." He pulled out another document. "For example, arbitration proceedings require a minimum of 3 commissioners to reach a verdict. Commissioners are appointed by member states, but appointments must be confirmed by a majority vote of existing commissioners. Guess which 4 civilizations hold 8 of the 12 commissioner seats? My stomach sank. The founding members, he confirmed, which means they have effective veto power over any arbitration decision. They have been using the Commerce Commission as a tool to maintain economic dominance for 2 centuries, and nobody noticed because the language is so bland and bureaucratic that nobody actually reads it. I stared at him. You're planning to change this. I'm planning to enforce the original intent, he corrected. The concordance was supposed to promote fair trade among all civilizations. Instead, it's become a system where 4 civilizations control economic policy for 300 others. That's not fair trade. That's just imperialism with better paperwork. Pennington, I said carefully, the founding members won't let you dismantle their power structure. Earth is a founding member. You are a human. You are essentially attacking your own government's interests. He looked at me with those mild, unremarkable eyes. Mr. Verne, I don't work for Earth's interests. I work for compliance with the established rules. If those rules are being abused, I fix the abuse. If my own government is doing the abusing, then I fix my own government. He smiled that terrible smile. That's the beauty of being a bureaucrat. I don't have to care about politics. I just have to care about procedure. I should have stopped him right there. I should have reported him to someone. Anyone. But instead I asked the stupidest question of my career. How are you going to do it? His smile widened. I'm going to file a formal complaint, and that's exactly what he did. 6 days later, Arthur Pennington submitted a 400-page document to the Concourse Council outlining systematic procedural violations in the Commerce Commission Charter. He cited 17 different clauses that had been misinterpreted or deliberately ignored. He provided historical evidence of biased decisions. He included statistical analysis showing that founding member civilizations won arbitration cases at a rate of 87%, which was statistically impossible if the system was actually fair. And then, because he was Arthur Pennington, he requested a formal investigation under Article 12, Section 8 of the Concordance Charter, which required the Council to respond within 30 days. The Council panicked. Properly, completely, utterly panicked. The Velxian representative tried to have the complaint dismissed on procedural grounds. Pennington pointed out that dismissing a procedural complaint on procedural grounds would be hilariously ironic and also explicitly forbidden under Article 12, Section Action. The Thornmere representative argued that investigating the Commerce Commission would undermine confidence in concordance institutions. Pennington helpfully noted that confidence in institutions should be based on those institutions actually functioning correctly, not on everyone politely pretending they did. The capillary representative tried a different approach. He invited Pennington to a private meeting to discuss a compromise. Pennington went to the meeting. He brought me along as a witness, which I appreciated until I realized he'd brought me along specifically so I'd have to testify later about what happened. The capillary representative, a distinguished diplomat named Theron Vass, met us in a private conference room. He was old, experienced, and very smooth, the kind of being who could convince you to buy ice on a frozen planet. Mr. Pennington, Vass began, your concerns are noted and appreciated. However, I wonder if perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. The Commerce Commission has served the Concordance well for 2 centuries. Surely we can find a way to address your concerns without a formal investigation. Of course, Pennington said pleasantly, we could reform the commissioner appointment process to ensure proportional representation from all member states. We could establish transparent criteria for arbitration decisions. We could implement regular audits of commission activities. We could do lots of things. Vyas smiled. Excellent. I'm glad we can reach an understanding. Now, in terms of implementation timeline, I still need to proceed with the formal investigation, Pennington interrupted. We can't implement reforms without documenting the existing problems. That's basic change management. You need a baseline assessment before you can measure improvement. Vass's smile froze. Mr. Pennington, an investigation would be disruptive. Surely your assessment is sufficient. My assessment is a preliminary report filed by a special compliance officer. It has no official standing. We need a proper investigation conducted by an independent review board. It's all in Article 12, Section 11. Very clear language. No ambiguity whatsoever. I watched Vass's composure crack slightly. Mr. Pennington, let me be direct. The founding members have significant resources. We could make your career very difficult. Pennington blinked. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining political reality. Pennington pulled out his journal and started writing. So to clarify, you are stating that the Capillary Confederacy will use its political influence to retaliate against a concordance official for filing a legitimate procedural complaint. Just want to make sure I have the quote accurate for my supplementary report. Vass went very pale. That's not what I said. It sounded very much like what you said, Mr. Virion. You heard that too, didn't you? I was going to die. This man was going to get me killed. I may have heard something along those lines, I admitted weakly. Pennington nodded, still writing. Excellent. This will make a wonderful addition to the evidence of institutional corruption. Thank you for your time, Representative Vassas. Unless you have anything else to add? Vass stood up abruptly. This meeting is over. Wonderful. I will file the minutes within the next 24 hours. Pennington gathered his papers cheerfully. Have a pleasant evening. We left the conference room. I was shaking. Actually physically shaking. He threatened you. I hissed. The Capillary Confederacy just threatened a Concord's official. They could have you killed. They could try, Pennington agreed. But that would be very stupid. I have already filed copies of my complaint with 14 different organizations, including the Interstellar Press Corps. If something happens to me, all my research goes public automatically. That's basic operational security. Always have a dead man's switch. You planned this? You wanted him to threaten you? I expected him to threaten me, Pennington corrected. There's a difference. Powerful people always assume threats will work because threats usually work, but threats only work if you are afraid of them. I'm not afraid of Representative Vassas. I'm afraid of improper documentation and unaudited financial statements. Very different fear profile. We walked back to his office. He made tea, actual tea, brewed in a ceramic pot that looked like it predated space travel. He offered me a cup. I took it because I needed something to hold on to. Mr. Pennington, I said finally, what's your end game here? Let's say you succeed. You expose the corruption. You force reforms. Then what? You will have made enemies of the four most powerful civilizations in the Concordant. Your career will be over. Your life might be over. He sipped his tea thoughtfully. Mr. Vone, do you know why I became a tax auditor? No, because I like rules. Not because they are rules. Not because I'm pedantic or obsessive, though I'm definitely both of those things. I like rules because they are supposed to make things fair. That's the entire point of laws and regulations. They exist so that powerful people can't just do whatever they want, so that small businesses can compete with large corporations, so that ordinary citizens have protection from government overreach. He set down his teacup. But rules only work if someone enforces them. And most people won't enforce rules against the powerful because they are scared. They are scared of losing their jobs. They are scared of retaliation. They are scared of being labeled as troublemakers. And I understand that fear. It's rational. It's human. He smiled sadly. But if everyone is too scared to enforce the rules, then the rules don't matter. And if the rules don't matter, then fairness doesn't matter. And if fairness doesn't matter, then we are just back to whoever has the most guns making all the decisions. So you are willing to sacrifice your career for fairness? I'm willing to do my job, he said simply. That's all this is. My job. If doing my job correctly makes powerful people angry, that's their problem, not mine. I didn't know what to say to that. So I drank my tea and tried to figure out if I was witnessing heroism or insanity. Probably both. The investigation began 3 weeks later. The Concordance Council had no choice. Pennington had followed every protocol perfectly. He'd filed every form correctly. He'd cited every relevant regulation. They couldn't dismiss the complaint without admitting that they didn't actually follow their own rules. So they appointed an independent review board. They tried to stack it with friendly commissioners. Pennington objected, citing conflict of interest regulations. They tried again. He objected again. After 4 failed attempts, they finally assembled a board that even Pennington couldn't dispute. The investigation took 6 months. During that time, Pennington worked normal business hours, filed his reports in triplicate, and grew his orchids. He didn't give interviews. He didn't make dramatic speeches. He just existed. Pleasantly, unremarkably, but the results of his complaint were anything but unremarkable. The review board found systematic bias in Commerce Commission decisions. They found procedural violations. They found evidence of backroom deals and preferential treatment. They found exactly what Pennington had documented in his original complaint. And then they issued recommendations. Reformed commissioner appointments, transparent arbitration criteria, regular independent audits, term limits for commissioners, proportional representation based on actual membership numbers, not founding member status. The founding members fought it. They argued. They threatened. They tried every political maneuver in existence. And Pennington defeated every single one by simply pointing at the regulations and saying, no, that's not how this works. The reforms passed by a vote of 247 to 4. The 4 founding members voted against. Everyone else voted for. Turns out that when you give 300 civilizations a chance to end a 2-century-old power imbalance, they take it. Within a year, the composition of the Commerce Commission changed completely. Within 2 years, arbitration decisions started reflecting actual legal merit instead of political convenience. Within 3 years, the entire economic structure of the concordance had shifted, and Arthur Pennington went back to his office, filed his reports, and moved on to his next case. I saw him one last time before I transferred to a different department. I needed to get away from the constant stress of watching this man casually demolish power structures. Mr. Pennington, I said, I need to know. Did you plan all of this from the beginning? The Drakorian investigation, the Commerce Commission reforms, all of it. He looked up from his paperwork, surprised. Oh, heavens no, I just follow the evidence. The Drakorians were violating shipping regulations. When I investigated why, I found patterns in how violations were being ignored. When I investigated those patterns, I found the systemic bias in the Commission. It's just logical progression. One violation leads to another. You keep pulling threads until you find the whole tapestry. And you are not afraid of where those threads might lead. He smiled. That mild, pleasant, absolutely terrifying smile. Mr. Bone, the threads always lead somewhere uncomfortable. That's the nature of corruption. It hides in comfortable places where people don't want to look. But someone has to look. Someone has to pull the threads. Someone has to care more about doing the right thing than about being comfortable. He gestured to his filing cabinets, which contained thousands of meticulously organized documents. This is all I do. This is all I am. I'm not a hero. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm just a bureaucrat who reads the fine print and insists that people follow the rules they agreed to follow. If that changes the galaxy, well, perhaps the galaxy needed changing. I left his office and never looked back. But I heard the stories. Everyone heard the stories. The human who ended a trade monopoly with a complaint form. The bureaucrat who made generals fear his signature. The man who reformed the concordance by simply insisting that rules should apply to everyone equally. Arthur Pennington, tax auditor, compliance officer, orchid enthusiast, the most dangerous human in the galaxy, because he proved something that terrified every corrupt official, every abusive government, every powerful entity that thought they were above the law. He proved that paperwork properly weaponized was more powerful than any fleet. He proved that regulations consistently enforced could topple empires. He proved that one person who genuinely gives a damn about fairness can change everything. And he did it all with a fountain pen, a briefcase, and an absolute refusal to accept that some people were too powerful to be held accountable. I still work for the concordance. I still see the effects of his reforms every single day. The galaxy is fairer now, more transparent, more accountable. And somewhere out there, Arthur Pennington is probably sitting in his office, reviewing another trade agreement, finding another violation, preparing another meticulous report, growing his orchids, drinking his tea, following the rules, being absolutely devastatingly average, being utterly, completely unstoppable. Because that's what humans do when they decide something matters. They don't need weapons. They don't need armies. They don't need to be special or enhanced or extraordinary. They just need to care. Really, truly, stubbornly care. And then they change the entire galaxy with nothing but paperwork and spite. God help us all if humanity ever decides to care about something on a large scale. Actually, scratch that. God help the corruption, because humanity is coming with forms to fill out in triplicate.